My absolute favorite thing about investing in real estate is this intangible benefit right here. Mispricing. What does mispricing mean? Well, when you go on your brokerage account, your Schwab account, right, and you want to buy a share of something, let's call it an index fund, right, SPY, it shows you the price, and you got to pay that price for it. Maybe later the price will be different, and maybe the next week the price will be a relatively good deal, but it's always the price that everybody else gets for that particular asset. And real estate is absolutely not like that. The one-of-one nature of every property, every single unit is unique, every single parcel is unique. It carries over to every transaction too. Every transaction is unique, and there's so many circumstances that affect that transaction. Terms affect pricing. The buyer and the seller affect pricing. Sentiment affects pricing, and in a way such that you can get a really, really good deal on something that other people don't generally have access to on the open market. You can buy something for, that was a really long way of saying, you can buy real estate for below fair market value. I'm gonna give you a couple examples because look, I know it sounds too good to be true to say, hey, you're a beginner, go out there and just get these great deals like me. And maybe you won't be chasing the home runs like we do because we spend so much money and we have employees and we've developed a process, but you can do it in ways that don't require you to build a large outfit. And I'll show you an example of mispricing on 4 different properties we bought that give you an idea, and I'll tell you the story behind it, and give you an idea of how you can get deals at a discount from market value. Obviously, we'll talk more about it during the actual process portion, but I want you to understand how abundant the opportunities for mispricing really are when you invest in real estate. And I also want to give you a disclaimer that for some reason my 12-year-old dog just had dinner. I'm shooting at home and he's decided to play like he's a puppy right now with my 3-year-old. So if you hear him growling, it's because they're fighting over this big dirty stuffed chicken. Anyways, the first example of mispricing here is an MLS deal. This was a 5-unit, it's a 4-plex with a commercial space down below. And we got this right when the events of COVID kicked off. I think we closed in July of 2020, but this was in our pipeline from like the beginning of 2020. This was actually listed on the MLS. Now this seller, I'll be fair, he called us from a mailer that we sent to him. The property was listed for $185. We were trying to work with the broker. He was willing to give it to us for $125. We were going to negotiate some, and then boom, COVID hits and he really wants to sell. There was distress. It was on the market for a long time. There were 2 brothers who owned this particular property. One of the brothers was like the well-behaved, the financier, the one who was running a business. He lived far from the property and he was just kind of funding the whole operation. The other brother was the one who he was helping basically by paying for the property, letting the bad brother, who was kind of a mess, run the whole operation, right? And the brother who was running the operation was the one also showing up to the listings and trying to get the property sold, making it very hard to sell when you had a broker on the MLS, especially considering there was deferred maintenance, they had bad relationships with the tenants, all that stuff, right? So anyways, the 125 offer was negotiated down to 100. And then back up to 125, and then down to 100. And the seller promised us a nice property where everything's been done to it. And we said, fine, we'll agree to 125, but if anything's off, it's being subtracted. And over the course of escrow, we negotiated. There's a lot of drama in this deal, but we ended up bagging it for $85,000 at closing. And you've seen the story of this deal many times on the Instagram page. We're finally refinancing this property. That's my golden drinking water. He's a very loud water drinker, if you heard that. But anyways, we got this property for 85 grand. We are in it for probably about 45,000 of repairs, and there's still some things that we haven't completely replaced yet because they weren't needed. Maybe we'll have another 10,000 to spend. So we'd be in it for about 55 repairs, all in for 140 on this 7,000 square foot 5-unit building that rents for about $4,200 a month, and it was well over a 20 cap, right? So this thing is probably worth about $350 now. We've had a hard time getting the commercial space leased COVID. Maybe because of the leasing agent, maybe because we don't care that much, but it's all renovated and pretty, and it's in a good part of town, but this block has had a lot of riffraff on it, and a lot of it's because of the previous owner and the activity on the street. So we've been kind of clearing that out by replacing the tenants, calling the police, and slowly getting better and better, right? The 4 units that are residential rented out perfectly, never been a problem. And it's in great condition because we spent all this money to fix it up. So property's worth $300, $350, maybe $375 once we get that commercial unit filled in. And we are all in for $130, $135, $140, $140 once we spend a little bit of extra money on it, right? Which we don't need to quite yet. That's over a 50% discount on an MLS deal. just because we found something in distress under the right circumstances, and we really had to work through this escrow to be able to get that price and negotiate well. So that's one way of how you can get a good deal, even on the MLS, if you know how to just get yourself into the right situation. Deal number 2. This property is found by one of our sales reps at the office, and yes, he has time to stay on Facebook Marketplace, but you could too. Our sales rep found this 9-unit package on Facebook Marketplace. Now, it wasn't listed as 9 units. It was listed as like a 13-bed, 9-bath, single-family home by a very wealthy, very doesn't give a shit anymore, 70-something-year-old seller that just wanted to take all his money and move to his $1 million condo in Florida that he had gotten to spend enough quality time with. This property, as it stands, is worth at least $450. At least $450. It's in Hammond, Indiana. It's right next to the Chicago border. It's actually in a pretty good part of town. I'd call this part of town now B- even. And we got it for $215. Now, it was listed on Facebook Marketplace for $275. We called the seller, we were quick to it. Now, he wanted a reliable offer, which is why we were able to win this deal. But also, he took it right off after we started talking to him, right? So we didn't have a whole bunch of competition. It was between us and like this one other person he knew on a personal level that wasn't able to afford it ultimately, and we ended up making a cash offer. So Facebook Marketplace, $215K purchase after some negotiation. The units will all need to be cosmetically turned as these tenants cycle. The property will be like a 16 cap, and it's worth like a 7 cap. And that's a 16 cap at our all-in. It'll need like 80, 90K of rehab as these tenants cycle. Right now, it doesn't need anything. It just needed some like cleanup in the basements and has a little bit of deferred maintenance in the front, right? Just clean it up, get this like rotted fascia repaired and replaced, wrap some of these windows, get this ivy off, some power washing and some tuck pointing in the front, and that about gets it done. So about like 10, 15 grand of deferred maintenance up front, and then 7K per unit as these tenants cycle over time, and you got a home run deal. And after we spend all that money on this property, it's not gonna be worth $450. It'll actually be worth these 9 units, right? 75 a unit easy, maybe even 80 a unit in this particular area in today's market. So it'll be worth a little over $700,000, and we'll be all in for about 300K. This is a Facebook Marketplace deal. This is publicly available stuff. This is crazy. We didn't have to fight for it during the escrow. It's a little tricky. We did have to pay cash just to seem serious, and we carried ourselves very professionally to win this deal, but it was available to you technically like it would have been to us. A third example. This property came from a wholesaler. It was a duplex in Gary, Indiana, which has a bad rap, but we've actually been very successful in this town. And this is next to a university. It's close to the southernmost portion of town, or the southernmost zip code of town that's near other suburbs. And this property was brought to us by a wholesaler for $35,000. Now, it was also listed on Zillow for sale by owner by this wholesaler for $70,000 or $75,000. I think it was 70. Apparently wasn't getting bites. I don't know why. And then it was also listed on Facebook Marketplace for $35,000 or $37,000. Wholesaler came to us. I don't know if our sales rep had worked with him before or if it was like a new lead that he kind of hunted down. But we were approached by this wholesaler. We might have been on their mailing list. And we actually ended up bidding over the $35K initial asking price. And they wanted a sight unseen, one quick walkthrough, 7-day close. So we literally got the inspection results or the walkthrough results on the closing date. And we had to pay cash, of course, $37,000 property, right? You hear him going at it. I'm definitely not reshooting this video. So you're going to deal with a bark or two over the course of this one, because I'm hustling to get this, this program done for you guys. $37,000, went $2K over asking. We got inspection photos, but not a report, literally just pictures and a word from our inspector going, hey, this property is actually in pretty good shape. The day that we were wiring the money to title, we literally held off on sending the closing docs and wiring the funds until we got the inspection photos in. We did not have to market directly to seller for this particular property. And this property, when we got into it, ended up being in perfect condition, dated, perfect condition, newer mechanicals. You can see the roof is newer here. You can see the windows are all in excellent shape, replaced dual pane vinyl, the brick's in good condition, and even the siding's looking all right on this property. Yes, it's a C-class neighborhood, but this duplex is worth $100,000 today. We have not spent $1 on it. The tenants have been increased $50 each, and it's renting for like $1,200 a month. And the property at our purchase price is something like a 24 cap, and we could sell it at about a 9.5 or a 10 cap right now in today's market. So this was over a double bagger on a deal that came to us, was brought to us from a wholesaler that was marketed elsewhere that you could have grabbed. And then the king of off-market deals, or ways to get off-market deals, this came from a direct mail lead. And we do direct mail, we do limited phone-based marketing because we're very cognizant of compliance laws. But this was marketing to a seller, 100% off market. You could not have gotten this property publicly at all. Now the seller was talking to a broker, but they didn't want to deal with a broker. They wanted to deal directly with a seller. This was 12 units in Louisville, Kentucky, in a B- neighborhood that needed minimal work, older mechanicals, or mixed age, but most of them were past 10 years, and a little bit of work to these mansard roofs on the sides that honestly will last much longer because the tops of the roofs have 15 years left on each of them. We got these 12 units after negotiating and going through a bit of like a justified escrow process, let's put it that way. It took some skill to get through this escrow process, but we mailed. The seller called us. This is in September of 2020. We ended up having to close cash because we were sloppy about getting our financing done. You may not be sloppy about getting your financing done like us because you might come prepared for a deal like this. And we bagged the deal for $475. Well, we refied the deal immediately after purchase. We purchased in the middle of November 2020. We started the refi process in January 2021, and we got an appraisal. Finally, this local bank was slow. We didn't have a relationship with them in advance. We got an appraisal, I think in end of February or March. It was just about a year from when I'm shooting this video. Appraised instantly at $880,000. Instantly. We spent $500 on a water heater on this particular property. Now, fast forward a year and change. We've increased rents, we've made some improvements to a few units, and the market's gotten hotter since. It's improved, and market rents have gone up since, and this property is easily worth $1 million. We could sell it for $1 million in a snap. So talk about home run deals. These other deals were home runs as well. Smaller, a little messier, a little more complicated. This was a big home run actually. This was a really nice, clean, expensive property in a known market, Louisville, Kentucky, right? So trendy market, and it was a home run right out of the gates, 50% discount essentially. And it's because we marketed directly to the seller. So this is how mispricing ends up working on these off-market properties. These are 4 different ways to get properties mispriced, by the way, right? Choose whatever vehicle you like. I think the different methods all are commensurate to a certain workload. We worked really hard for this one, and I'd say a little bit hard for these two. We had to kind of put ourselves in the right place at the right time and have the ability to close. And on this one, it was really easy to find the deal. It was very hard to get through the deal. So you kind of pick your poison, but just know that if you can go on the stock market and you can look at a share of Apple and it's going for 170 and you could find a way to buy it for 85 today, wouldn't you? Wouldn't that make it a much more profitable means of investing, a much more scalable means of investing if you had the wherewithal to figure out how to buy it at even a 20-30% discount from today's current price? And that's what I'm kind of trying to tell you guys. These are home runs that came from different sources, complete home runs. But we buy deals every week at 20% off of market value, 30% off of market value. If you could even get in at a 15% discount from market value on a clean, easy finance deal, you're winning as a new real estate investor.